Rain hammered against the glass walls of the penthouse, as if the entire city was being swallowed by the storm. From the highest floor overlooking the endless skyline, Jake stood motionless before the window, his cold eyes staring at the streams of headlights below. A glass of whiskey rested in his hand, the ice already melted. Yet he had not taken a single sip. His father's voice still echoed inside his head like a curse. "Jake, my company is about to be seized." That hoarse, exhausted voice tightened something deep inside his chest. Jake slowly closed his eyes. The past came flooding back instantly. A broken house, the smell of alcohol, screaming, bottles shattering against the wall, his mother trembling in the corner, and a young Jake holding her tightly while waiting for his drunken father's rage to end. It was during those nights that Jake swore to himself he would become rich someday, powerful enough that no one would ever look down on him again. And he had done it. From a poor nobody, Jake had become the brightest rising star of Blackstone Financial Group. Yet the higher he climbed, the emptier he felt inside. Buzz! His phone suddenly vibrated. Jake glanced at the screen. Sophia. His heartbeat stopped for a brief second. After a moment of hesitation, he answered, "Hello?" There was only the sound of shaky breathing on the other end. Then, Sophia's trembling voice finally came through. "Jake." The moment he heard her voice, he knew something was terribly wrong. "What happened?" "My father had an accident." Jake straightened immediately. "What?" "He's at St. Mary Hospital." Sophia's voice nearly broke. "And?" "My father's company is collapsing." Jake fell silent. He understood exactly what that meant. When a corporation's accounts were frozen and its stock crashed overnight, it was basically a death sentence. "Jake." Sophia bit her lip. "I have no one else to ask for help." That sentence pierced straight through his heart. At that moment, he remembered the girl from years ago, standing beneath the falling snow, just to bring him a scarf. She had once told him, "Even if the whole world turns its back on you, I'll still stand beside you." Jake tightened his grip around the phone. "I'm coming." St. Mary Hospital was terrifyingly cold near midnight. Sophia sat outside the emergency room with red, swollen eyes. Her perfectly styled hair was now a mess. There was no trace left of the proud Carter heiress everyone once admired. At this moment, she was simply a desperate woman. Footsteps echoed through the hallway. Sophia looked up. Jake appeared. The instant she saw him, every emotion she had been holding back for hours completely shattered. "Jake." He walked toward her quickly. "What did the doctors say?" "My father still hasn't woken up." Sophia lowered her head. "But that's not even the worst part." Jake stared at her. Sophia took a deep breath. "Someone is deliberately destroying Carter Group." Jake froze. "What do you mean?" "Our partners canceled their contracts overnight. The banks demanded immediate repayment. The media started spreading rumors about financial fraud inside the company." Sophia looked directly into his eyes. All of it happened in a single night. Jake immediately understood. This wasn't an accident. This was a hunt. At that moment, an older voice spoke from behind them. "I know who's behind it." Jake and Sophia turned around at the same time. Richard Hall, the longtime financial advisor of Carter Group. He looked at Jake with a complicated expression. "You shouldn't be here." Jake's voice turned cold. "If you know something, say it." Richard hesitated for several seconds before sighing heavily. "It's Blackstone." Sophia went pale instantly. Blackstone, the very company Jake worked for. A chill ran down Jake's spine. Suddenly, he remembered the secret meeting from the night before. His boss, Daniel, had said, "Tomorrow will be the biggest acquisition of the year." At the time, Jake hadn't paid attention. But now everything became clear. Jake immediately called his assistant. "Daniel, check every file related to the Carter acquisition." There was silence on the other end. "That project is classified." "I'll ask one last time." Daniel lowered his voice. "Blackstone is preparing to acquire Carter Group at a bargain price." Sophia's face turned pale. Slowly, she looked at Jake. Did you know about this? Jake looked directly at her. No, he answered instantly. If I had known, I would have stopped it. Sophia stared at him for a long time. Then she slowly nodded. Because deep inside, she still trusted him. But at that exact moment, the sound of high heels echoed through the hallway. Click, click, click. A woman in a red dress walked toward them. Beautiful, sharp, dangerous. Jake recognized her immediately. Lily, Daniel's only daughter, the woman who had been appearing beside Jake at every major business event recently. Lily stopped in front of him, a faint smile curving her lips. I knew you'd be here. Jake's expression hardened. What are you doing here? Lily didn't answer immediately. She turned toward Sophia. I'm sorry about your father. Sophia remained silent. Lily continued calmly. But business is war. The weak are destined to lose. Jake frowned. Lily. She let out a soft laugh. Are you angry? Jake, don't forget who brought you to where you are today. Jake clenched his fists tightly. Lily stepped closer. My father wants to see you. Right now. Blackstone headquarters remained fully lit at 1 in the morning like a fortress that never slept. Jake entered the top-floor conference room. Daniel sat at the end of the massive table, calmly looking down at the city lights below. The man was the reason Jake had risen from nothing to become one of the most powerful young businessmen in the country. Daniel didn't even look up. You came. Jake stood still. You're destroying Carter Group? Daniel smiled faintly. No, I'm simply buying a weak company. Jake's voice turned icy. You know, Sophia. I do. Daniel finally looked directly at him. And I also know you once loved her. The room fell silent. Daniel slowly stood up. Jake, there is no love in business. There are only winners and losers. He pushed a contract across the table. If you sign this, you'll become the youngest CEO in Blackstone history. Jake stared at the contract. This was everything he had sacrificed his youth for. Money, power, status. All of it was only one signature away. Then Daniel placed another file in front of him. Jake opened it. His face immediately changed. It was the confidentiality agreement he signed when he first joined Blackstone. If he betrayed the company's interests, he would lose everything, every asset, every share. He would be sued for tens of millions of dollars and permanently banned from the financial industry. Daniel looked at him coldly. Every choice has a price. Do you want to save Sophia or protect your own future? Jake remained silent. Inside his mind appeared the image of Sophia crying at the hospital. Her trembling voice echoed once more. I have no one else to ask for help. And in that moment, Jake realized something terrifying. No matter how hard he tried to forget her, he still loved her. 3 in the morning, Jake drove through the storm in silence. His phone kept vibrating. Lily. Again and again. But he ignored every call. He returned to the hospital. Sophia was standing alone on the balcony. The cold wind blew through her hair. Jake walked toward her. She didn't turn around. You met them, didn't you? Jake stayed silent. Sophia gave a bitter smile. I figured. Jake stood beside her. I'll find a way. Sophia looked at him. Jake, don't destroy your future because of me. That sentence hurt him more than anything else. The only person still thinking about him was the woman who was suffering the most. Jake let out a bitter laugh. You've always been like this. Sophia frowned slightly. What do you mean? Jake stared into the distant city lights. Years ago, your father came to see me. Sophia froze. The day before I disappeared, Jake continued quietly. He offered me money and told me to leave your life. Sophia shook her head repeatedly. No, that's impossible. He said if I stayed beside you, he would destroy my family and make my mother lose her job. Sophia burst into tears. Then why didn't you tell me? Jake looked at her for a long moment. Because if you chose me, you would have lost everything. Tears streamed endlessly down Sophia's face. For years, she believed Jake had abandoned her. But the truth was, he left to protect her. Jake stepped forward, wanting to hold her. wanting to wipe away her tears like he used to. But he stopped himself, because he knew if he took one more step, there would be no turning back. Then Lily's voice suddenly interrupted. What a touching scene. They turned around. Lily stood at the doorway with icy eyes. She looked at Jake. My father was right. You really are willing to betray Blackstone because of her. Jake's voice hardened. That's enough. Lily laughed bitterly. You know something, Jake? From the very beginning, I understood. No matter how long you stayed beside me, your heart only belonged to Sophia. Jake remained silent, and that silence became the answer. Lily's eyes slowly reddened. I begged my father to keep you. I gave you every opportunity. I thought one day you'd finally see me. She smiled painfully. But in the end, I was only a replacement. Sophia froze. Lily turned toward her. If Jake helps you, he'll lose everything. Sophia immediately looked at Jake. Is that true? Jake only gave a bitter smile, neither denying it, nor explaining anything. The next morning, Blackstone headquarters was filled with unbearable tension. Jake entered the main conference room. Daniel was already waiting. Lily stood behind her father with conflicted eyes. Daniel pushed the contract toward Jake once more. You have 10 seconds to decide. Jake slowly picked up the pen. Inside his mind, there was only Sophia's tearful face beneath the rain. Daniel began counting coldly. 10, 9, 8. Sophia stood outside the glass conference room door. Tears streamed endlessly down her face. I'd rather lose everything than lose you again. Jake froze. His eyes slowly turned red. Daniel smirked faintly. Love always makes people weak. San. R1. Jake lowered the pen and signed the contract. Lily's eyes widened in shock. Daniel smiled in satisfaction. But the moment he reached for the agreement, Jake suddenly looked up. His gaze was colder than anyone had ever seen before. You really think I signed this to lose to you? Daniel frowned. Jake slowly pulled out his phone. On the screen, one sentence appeared. Transfer complete. The smile on Daniel's face vanished instantly. Jake stared directly into his eyes. All of Blackstone's hidden assets have already been transferred out of the system. Lily stood frozen. For the first time in years, Daniel's face turned pale. Jake slowly stood up. His voice echoed through the silent room like ice. The real game is only beginning now. The entire room fell into absolute silence. Outside the giant glass windows, thunder roared across the city sky, as if announcing that a far more terrifying war had just begun.